welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I want to share with you some of my planty hacks, tips, tricks that I've learned along the way to make plant care and growing plants a little more easier, and I thought I would share them with you today. So I have made a little list of some of the planty hacks, tips I want to share with you, and yeah, we will just jump straight in. Sorry if you can hear my washing machine in the background. I just, you gotta multitask, you gotta get the jobs done, so hopefully that'll be finished soon and you won't hear it. But I want to start with, I'll start with the more simple, more sort of like common knowledge tips and tricks. So the first sort of hack, tip, trick, whatever you want to call it, is for growing plants like Hoya, where they like to vine and tendril, and generally they prefer some sort of support to grow on or around, and they will push out long sort of tendrils in search of some support, and often they won't grow leaves until they find said support. So I found over the years that round trellises or round hoop supports are probably one of the best and most easiest way for growing Hoya and for keeping them nice and manageable and in a sort of compact size. Why I prefer the round hoops opposed to like a sort of like a ladder or a trellis or something like that is because as these plants grow, these long tendrils, you can sort of just keep wrapping it around and around and around, and it's the round shape is like quite an ergonomical shape for wrapping the vines around, and it just makes for easy compact plant care. As you can see, if I turn it around, you can see all the tendrils and stems that I've just wrapped around and round, and I've used these little plant clips to help hold it onto the trellis, and I just think it makes for a really nice display. And I must say, this is a really beautiful Hoya. I think it's just a Hoya pubicalyx, but it's a really splashy kind. It may be something different because it comes out with these beautiful red sort of burgundy new leaves that fade down to green. But yeah, I'm obsessed with the splash on this plant. From what I've read and what I've heard, Hoya like to go in an anti-clockwise direction. So if you wrap them in a clockwise direction, sometimes the growth tips can dry up and die off. So yeah, I think they do like growing in an anti-clockwise position. I don't know, that's just what I've heard. So that is tip number one for growing plants like Hoya if you want to keep them nice and tidy and compact, is a round hoop plant support. I'll also add that it's not just limited to Hoya. You can grow plants like vining philodendrons on a round support, and again you just wrap the vines round and around, and it helps to create a nice lush full display that is nice and manageable and compact. So while we're on the topic of sort of like plant supports, trellises, things like that, I want to talk about staking plants that you wouldn't normally think about staking. So for example, plants like begonia, normally I see them growing just as a normal plant, I guess, as like a bushy sort of plant without any sort of support. But I find that staking plants like begonia helps again keep them nice and manageable. It gives them some support when they grow tall and leggy. Like this plant is pretty tall and I just have it on a clear support stake. And again, I just think it keeps the plant nice and compact, keeps it within its growing space. It makes for a nice foliage display. Another one I want to show you is my other begonia, which actually, if you haven't seen already, I recently did a repotting video where I repotted all these begonias. So if you haven't seen that, make sure you go to my channel and check that one out. But another example is this one here. This one also has a big clear plant stake, and it just helps keep all the stems in one sort of small compact area, and again it just makes for a really nice plant display. Yeah, if you haven't thought about it already, plants that you wouldn't necessarily think need a support or a trellis, try trellising them, because it also gives a nice unique way of growing. And while we're on that topic, I want to show you a new product that we got in for the website, but it is a brilliant design. I will show you. So this is my variegated peace lily. Now you wouldn't necessarily think about supporting a peace lily, but this plant is actually supported under all the foliage here. This thing here, this is a petiole stem support star, and it's basically just a little star-shaped prong that has little hooks on, and you can put them into plants like peace lily that sort of sprawl out and can grow quite sort of wild and take up a lot of room. This just helps keep all the stems in a manageable area, keeps the plant compact, and actually makes a really nice display of foliage. So yeah, I really like these new things. They are on our website. I will link them down below if you are in New Zealand. Okay, moving on from that, while we're on the topic of creating a lush, beautiful foliage display, I want to talk about a little tip or trick that I have for growing plants where you want a nice sort of frontal display of foliage. So what I mean by this is that you want to place your plants in front of a light source. So I have a big window here which a lot of my plants face towards, and growing them facing the light can help create a nice frontal foliage display. So for example, this is my philodendron Jose Bueno, and it is facing the light source, which means all the leaves are facing the front and not the back. So this is a plant that you wouldn't necessarily rotate because it's growing on a pole, so you kind of want all the foliage facing the front, but it just makes for a really eye-catching foliage display. So obviously this is the side that you want to look at, and this is the side that you face the light towards. Side note, look at its stunning new leaf that is coming in. I love this plant, it is so beautiful, but I will show you some other examples of plants that are facing towards the light. Another example of this are my Monstera albos. They are also facing the window. You get the real visual impact of what the plant looks like. I just really like this way of growing. I like having the plants all face the front. So when I look at them and admire them and take photos of them for Instagram, they look more impactful, and yeah, you get to see the whole plant in one sort of visual space. Again, another example is my beautiful variegated heartleaf philodendron. Again, it is facing the light source, so all the leaves are facing the front, and when you look at it, you just get a really beautiful display of all the leaves facing the front. And I will show you an example of where the light source isn't at the front of the plants, and this is sort of what happens when it's not. For an example like this, pole is sort of facing towards me, but the leaves are facing more towards the window. So it doesn't really matter, because when you look at it like foliage side, it looks really good because all the leaves are facing one way. But if you were to look at it front on, you can see that all the leaves are trying to face the light. And same goes for this area of my plants. So I can't have a light source facing towards them because this is our walkway. So I have to have the light source above them, and as you can see, the foliage is facing the light source, which is facing upwards. This beautiful Monstera Peru is doing really well here. All the leaves are facing up, but that's okay because this plant looks nice. Like, this is how you sort of look at this plant, so I don't mind that as much. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not just rambling too much, but yeah. So my next tip is to do with propagation, and this is especially good for beginners or just for people who love propagating their plants and sort of want an easy method of propagation whilst still growing the plant to its full potential. And for that is grow poles. So you can either use the plastic back grow poles, you can use your traditional round wire mesh moss poles, Any pole that the plant can grow its aerial roots into, and any sort of pole that you can fill with a substrate, works fantastic for this. So the theory behind that is, as the plant grows, each one of its nodes will root into the pole. So it's essentially every node is already propagated itself. So when it comes to cutting it up, each node will have its own root system, and you can essentially just pot that straight into a pot, and that just speeds up the whole process. So your plant is already rooted, now it can focus on growing a new plant or growing foliage rather than trying to grow the root system first and then grow the foliage. It just speeds up the whole process, and you don't have to worry about your cutting not having a root system because it already has a root system in the pole. And as you can see from this philodendron painted lady, it has a very substantial root system in the pole, and so much so that the roots are all coming out of the top. So I really need to fill this pole and extend it or propagate this plant. I don't really know what to do. I actually have had this growing in my grow tent, and I've recently brought it into my home, which is why it has started to grow a little bit weird because it's trying to face the light again, but I don't mind. But anyway, yeah. So if you want a fail-proof method of propagating plants, especially climbing plants, so think of things like philodendron, monstera, pothos, syndapsis. You can even actually grow anthuriums. Some anthuriums you can grow up poles. But yeah, any of those sort of plants that you want to propagate, I highly recommend growing them on a grow pole for easy, fuss-free propagation. And if you want to see how this is done, I have made a video of when I propagated my Monstera albo. Same thing, it was growing on a grow pole. I cut all the rooted nodes, potted them up, and every single, I think I got 9 cuttings in total, like 9 single node cuttings in total, and all of them rooted. All of them were rooted, all of them grew into beautiful plants, and the top cutting, which had again also rooted into the pole, is now its own separate plant. So that's another thing, is that when your plant reaches the top of its pole, you can just cut it off, start again, and it's already got its root system there. So it just reduces the potential of losing your plant. Highly recommend. Okay, so the next plant hack, tip, trick I want to talk about is growing your plants in clear pots. Now, there's a lot of debate whether growing plants in clear pots is actually good for the plant, but if you grow plants in a clear pot and then put it into a cover pot, no problem. Plants' roots do seek darkness, so if they are exposed to the light like this, it's probably more beneficial for it to be in a cover pot, just so it creates a dark space for the roots. But when you want to pull the plant out to monitor the root system, you can see through the pots. And why this is such a plant hack is that it has saved so many of my plants from overwatering, underwatering, pests. You can see what is happening under the soil, and that is why I am a clear pot stan. I will always use them. I think they're absolutely fantastic. So if you can see on this pot here, you can see that there is a lot of condensation building up on the pot, which means that this soil substrate is still really moist. Therefore, it doesn't need a water, therefore stopping me from overwatering it. I'll try and show you with this anthurium. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on camera, but you can sort of see that this section of the substrate is still moist and this top section of the substrate is dry. So this plant shouldn't need a water until it is sort of, I don't know, sort of up to here is dry. And that is the good thing about clear pots. This just takes the guesswork out of knowing when to water your plants, and you really get to learn sort of how long it takes for a plant to dry out, because you can put your, like if I put my finger in the top of the soil down to knuckle height, it would feel dry, and if it was in a black pot, it would feel dry, and I would think, oh, this plant needs a water because the soil is dry. But in theory, the bottom half is still got moisture in it. So this has definitely saved my plants from root rot, essentially. Yeah, if you're a beginner or you are just sort of learning when or how to water your plants, I highly recommend potting them in clear pots. And actually, One thing I did notice is that when you water your plants, even if you think you are giving them a really thorough watering, water will always try and find the easiest route. So you can think you are really drowning your plant, but all the water is essentially just going through the quickest and easiest route, and it might leave a whole dry section in the pot. So when you are watering, make sure you thoroughly water the whole pot until you can see moisture all around the pot. That is another thing that clear pots help with as well. You can really get to see when you have thoroughly drenched your plant and when you have not. Okay guys, I think that concludes today's video. I hope you learned something new. I hope you found some sort of hack, tip, trick that you can implement into your own plant care journey to make your life a little bit easier. And yeah, don't forget to like this video if you like this type of content, and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel because it really means a lot, and then you won't miss out when I upload more planty themed videos. As always, if you have any suggestions on videos that you would like to see, please leave them in the comment box below and I will try my best to film that sort of video. We are in the last month of winter here in New Zealand and I'm so excited for spring. You have no idea. My plant enthusiasm to do chores and planty tasks is at an all-time low, so I am very much looking forward to the warmer weather, to when things start growing a bit more, and yeah, doing more planty chores. So thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!